minutes late. All right, so this last session is the social justice entrepreneurship track. I want to, one, get your ideas of what that even means, and then I'm going to give you a little background on me and what I do from a social justice perspective and as an entrepreneur. So first, let's start with what is a social justice entrepreneur? Because sometimes those things seem like counterintuitive to each other. What does that mean?
I guess you see a problem and you come up with a creative way to address it.
You see a problem and you come up with a creative way to address it. What's the entrepreneurial side of it?
You make it your job, your hustle.
You make it your job, you make it your hustle. Okay, what else? New ideas, developing those ideas. Okay, that's innovative social justice, right? Creative approaches to long-term social justice problems. But what's the entrepreneurial component of it, though? Be your own boss. What else?
You have to build it and finance it.
You have to build it and finance it. But there's another, what do you do? What's the entrepreneurial side of it when it's not money? Is that whole innovative approach to it, right? The business acumen of justice. Because oftentimes people will engage in the work of social justice without any business acumen, right? Not understanding how to build infrastructure, how to build long-term sustainability, right? So for something to become a movement, it needs infrastructure for sustainability in order to be here beyond a weekend or a month or a news cycle. And a lot of the things we see, they're cool in a news cycle moment, but they don't last the test of time without infrastructure. So before I really jump into it, I'm an entrepreneur. Sometimes people will consider me a social justice type of entrepreneur. I had a friend once referred to me as a values-based entrepreneur. I don't see the two being different. A little bit of my background. One, I am from Northern California, grew up in the Bay Area. I always say the Bay Area rather than pointing to a specific neighborhood, simply because I lived in a lot of places. I went to a different school from second grade all the way until 11th grade, grew up inner city. Mom was a substance abuser. Before that, we were just poor, and when we couldn't pay the rent, we moved. Served in the Army, fresh out of high school during Kuwait War, Desert Storm. After that, went to Howard University, graduated from Howard, was preparing for medical school, just accepted a call of ministry, and instead went to Duke Divinity School, worked on Capitol Hill for the Faith and Politics Institute as an intern, and then took a job. After that, worked in a church for a year. After that, worked as a national organizer around justice issues, education, ex-felon voting rights, voter registration programs, stuff like that. And in 2002, I quit that job and started my own consulting company, which has had several names over the years. It has now been under Toon and Associates, but now I don't even do the, the consulting work as much because I've invested this point of my life and my career into giving back. And so we're building infrastructure around my nonprofit so that I now will have something that outlives me, and it will become a part of my legacy when I'm no longer working and I become an expat. But anyway, so that's a little bit of my background, and we'll get more into that. And I have a number of slides that I want you to think about when you are considering this idea of a social justice entrepreneur. Number one, a critical question before you can even get into engaging the idea of entrepreneurship or social justice is dealing with understanding who are you meant to be in the world. Right? Who are you meant to be in the world? Because before you can engage in the work of justice, you got to know you and why you're here and what you're here to do and what are your unique gifts and talents that allow you to do it your way. Are you following me so far? This ain't a Baptist church. This ain't a Methodist church. But I do need y'all to talk to me. All right. You got to know who you're meant to be in the world so that you can find your place and the impact that you're supposed to have. Really getting to understand yourself and what makes you tick. When you talk about justice, what does that mean for you? Justice is such a vague word. When you think of justice, what do you think of? What issue? Pick an issue. Equal rights. What kind of equal rights? Racial equity. Okay, what about you? Classism and economic equality. What about you? When you think of justice, what do you come up with? First word pops in your head. What kind of justice? Racial justice. Okay. Anybody else? When you think of justice? Equal pay, right? Here's the thing. When you think about who you're meant to be in the world and you align that with your idea of what justice looks like, most of the time your answer is rooted in your own story, rooted in your own experiences. Next slide. What I mean by that is you can't just do any kind of justice, right? When the word is packed and vague. There's environmental justice. There's eco-justice. There's what people call social justice, and you got to break that down. You got the education inequalities. You got mass incarceration. You got what are we dealing with? Climate change. You have all of these different things, but when you look at your story and the experiences that have shaped who you are meant to be in the world, your upbringing, the challenges within your family, the challenges in your community, the issues that different family members have had in your life will determine and point you, and they will, in a sense, speak to you and point you in the direction of the type of justice that you're called to. Not just something that makes you feel good, but something that you're passionate about. I was hearing, I think it was Michael Beckwith say the other day, passion pulls you, but motivation pushes you. And so you want to be passionate more than motivated, because there will be days when you're not motivated, but passion will keep pulling you towards something. So in your story, there are life experiences that make you passionate about a given justice issue. For example, in my life, I told you, my mom was a substance abuser and an alcoholic. My uncles were hustlers. One did time for a murder beef. When he was in college, he killed somebody over a bad drug deal. My other uncle, he was a hustler on the streets. My aunt was a hustler. My grandfather served in the military. He worked on the shipyard 37 years, but he was a functional alcoholic, never took a day off in his life, never took a sick day, worked every day, but he drank every day. One of my uncles never learned to read, right? I grew up in an environment where there were times when I panhandled because of my mother's addiction. There were times when I didn't have school clothes and times when I didn't eat dinner. So when I developed a sense of agency and found myself in the world and developed a sense of passionate calling to change some things based on my life experiences, I now engage in the work of education and equality. And not just not simply demanding a fair and equitable education, but I align my money with my values and what justice looks like to me. I give not just to other organizations. I have two friends that have nonprofits. One that supports girls is called Freely and Hope. She works with young ladies who have been rescued from sex trafficking or some form of sexual abuse and works with them to heal their trauma, and then they go off to college. I provide money for those girls to go to college. Another friend has an organization in Washington, D.C., that Hope City Advocates, and they work with first-time offender black males, and they have a 95% success rate that those black males never go back to prison. I send them money too. But then I have my own nonprofit where I generate money, resources to give, and my own money, and from speaking engagements and otherwise, so that I can do stipends and scholarships for students as well. But then we have a program called Clear Conscience where I work with people like me to heal emotional and physical trauma because of some of the stuff we've been through growing up in the projects that will bruise you emotionally and have an impact on your life outcomes. So my idea of justice is rooted in my own story. Are y'all following me? Yes or no? All right. So you have to look at your story. What has happened in your life or in the lives of someone you care about that is calling you to do something about it, to speak up about those things, to develop program around those things, to put your money in alignment with what you say you care about. Someone once told me, don't tell me what you care about, show me your bank account and I'll tell you what you care about. Because how you spend your money will also have an impact and show you what your values really are. So you have this idea of, when you think about justice, you have inherited narratives and experiential narratives. I just explained some of what the experiential narratives are. There are inherited narratives that we sometimes take on as, in other words, the beliefs that our family members had about justice and equality and fairness, and we didn't question them, we just accepted them as true. For example, in my family, in the hood, I always heard ain't nothing gonna change. That no one outside of this neighborhood cares. That police can't be trusted, that basically no institution cares about us. So my ideas of justice in terms of my inherited narrative and the stories that were told to me almost made me believe that it was pretty much hopeless. So you have to look at what are the things that you were told about justice. The stories that the adults in your life when you were younger, when they talked about justice, what did they say? And did you just accept it as true and never question it, and now you live into that? Another big thing about justice, I'll give you an example. People talk about resist. We hear it all the time, right? Resist, resist, resist. I don't like it because, and here's why. Yes, we are to resist, but in the midst of resisting, you also need to figure out when are we going to go from resisting to winning something. Because if I'm only always focused on resist and struggle, I'm never focused on the strategy for actually winning so that I'm no longer always resisting. Are y'all following me? We have to create a vision of an end game or it's going to always be a fight. Because if you're always looking for a fight, you're going to find one. If you're looking for victory, you'll end the fight. So when you're focused on a given issue, it can't just be resist. There has to be a winning strategy. But we will inherit a narrative that tells us that the journey is only to resist. Your whole life, there's no victory on the other side of this thing? Of course there is. If you shift the narrative from just resist and struggle to win. And here's what we want to win. So you gotta question the stories that you live into, why you're believing them, and how do they impact your ideas of justice and entrepreneurship. When you think about your inherited narratives around money and the idea of entrepreneurship, what were you told about money? Were you told that you're always going to struggle, that it's hard to get money, that there's never enough money? If that is your inherited belief and you live into that, then guess what's going to happen? It's going to always be hard to get money. You're going to always struggle for money because you have convinced yourself that that's the way it's supposed to be. One of the myths in my family was around money. It was always a struggle narrative. There was always this mentality of scarcity and never enough. Even as an adult with 2 degrees and owning my own company, and I've moved millions of dollars through programs all over the world, there are times when I wake up still with anxieties around money. And my reality right now does not compare to my reality as a child. But there are still parts of me where the trauma of my past is still showing up in my present thinking and making me question, if it's always going to be this way. Because that wounded child who didn't have enough still isn't sure that this is real enough. Are y'all following me? And so you will find yourself, even economically, living into a past-driven present and have that impact the work that you seek to do in the world. If you don't deal with the fact that who I was then is not who I am now. I was a child then, but as an adult with agency, I can make sure I'm okay and therefore make sure doing this work is going to be okay. And here's the other thing. In order to do justice well, you do not have to be broke. Repeat after me. I do not have to be broke. Amen, somebody. You have to live into that, because if you don't live into that, here's what will happen. You will find yourself going out to do good work and asking other people to pay for it because you are living into a belief that in order for me to be liberated, somebody has to come liberate me. In other words, I can't liberate myself because I'm broke. And that's not true. How are you using your resources? When I grew up, here's another example. You talk about inherited narratives. I was taught like a lot of people. Have a good job, a savings account, and a checking account. That was it. No brokerage accounts, no CDs, no IRAs, no investments. We weren't taught that. So if I need to generate revenue as a social justice entrepreneur, and my economic knowledge is only rooted in get a job and checkings and savings, I am probably not going to generate the resources needed to fund this work. And then I'm going to go to someone who does know about IRAs, brokerage accounts, and money management and ask them for some money. Not because I'm not as capable as they are, but because they have more information about how money moves than I do. That's the only thing that separates us. Well, no, it isn't, because there are inherited narratives around the economics of racial disparities. So let me correct that, because we are there. The data even shows that one of the main reasons why African Americans cannot catch up economically to majority culture folks is also because of inherited wealth. I've met over the course of my life, especially as an adult now, more folk who just be inheriting money. I mean, I know a lot of people where they get, somebody die, they get checks. Somebody die in my family, I get a bill. It was a comedian, what's her name? She said, that sister that was in that recent movie, what was it? Yeah, Tiffany Haddish. She said, white folk die and leave a will, black folk die and leave a bill. And there are these inherited narratives around that. And I realized, but you know what? That's not my story anymore. Even though my mother was a substance abuser, my mother died 10 years ago of lung cancer. She was 53. She started shifting the narrative. But when she got clean and off of drugs, she worked in hospice care. Come to find out, before my mom died, my mom had health insurance plans. She made sure I was going to be able to pay for everything and left me a few dollars. Did not see that coming. But she was shifting the narrative. And now I already do it for my kids. I'm already putting money away and doing different things to make sure that they're okay. You have to, in order to shift your inherited narrative around money and justice, you have to educate yourself and find out, what do I not know about the economics of justice, the economics of inequality that I might be perpetuating through my own living, through my own habits. That I can break the cycle of inequality, not just around a justice issue, but around the economics of justice in my own family and in my community. Next slide. Money and meaning. So what I mean by that is this. America has a tendency, especially Western culture in general, a tendency to talk about success. Everyone wants to be successful. But what does that mean? What does success mean to you? When you think of success, what does that mean? growth, personal maturity. Okay, what else?
Crossing my goals off my list.
Crossing your goals off your list. What else? Say that again? Accomplishing everything you want to achieve. What, give me one more. Benefiting the community. Those are good ones, but when you see success perpetuated on television and in the media, what are they talking about when they say success? Get money, man. Get you some money. Success is get some money, get rich, be on television, and what else can you do? Buy a lot of big stuff. Big old house, big cars, expensive jewelry. That's what you do. That's success, right? But when you die, somebody's getting your jewelry, your house, and all your stuff. You cease to exist, and you have left no legacy. There's nothing to remember you for if that's all you did. Because I've never seen a U-Haul truck in a funeral procession. Your stuff is staying here. That kind of success is vague and it's not fulfilling, but when you attach your life, your money to meaning, it doesn't mean that you will not have nice things in your life, but it means that your values are not determined, your identity is not determined by things. That you're clear on who you are, you're comfortable in your own skin, and you don't need anything outside of you to define you. So now your life is more about your character and your values, and you use your money to do meaningful things, even though you make sure you're okay and live a good quality of life. You're moving money in a direction of things that matter. Your spending habits show that you have values. Are you following me? How you invest in justice issues. Money and meaning is about doing things that matter with your money. But before you can do that, you must have a clear sense of who am I? What shapes my beliefs about me? How I feel about myself? Am I comfortable in my own skin? Is there something I'm trying to hide from the world because I'm more concerned with public perception than I am with an authentic life? And so I'll sacrifice my authenticity on the altar of public perception because I'm more concerned with what other people think. If that is you, how can you possibly liberate anyone from anything when you ain't even trying to liberate yourself? You cannot do justice work when you are not treating yourself justly in every way. You want to talk about equitable education, but you don't read. You want to talk about job equality, but you show up to work late. It's like there's some contradictions in the narrative here. You got to live into that what you want to see happen into the world. You have to start living, at least practicing, right? Before you get some money, start talking good about money. About the money you're going to invest, the resources you're going to move and generate for social good causes, and the causes that you select actually matter to you deeply. And you don't have to tell everybody, because then you got to check your ego. What value am I getting out of telling everyone? What's going on in me that I need to do that to feel good about me? And who am I tearing down in the justice movement who we're claiming we're allies and partners, and yet I'm attacking them because they're getting more attention than me? What's going on with me? Because a part of why we're not winning some of these fights is because of the infighting. The pursuit of attention and accolades and cameras. And that's because people haven't gotten in touch with their own stories, their own narratives, to heal their own broken places. And now justice becomes a tool for them to soothe their brokenness by manipulating an issue without even bringing about any change. Because once the issue's gone, their identity is so attached because of their broken places, they're not actually looking for a solution. They're actually just to be a mouthpiece for the pain, dealing with their own internal pain. So money and are you investing in your own emotional health? So if you're looking at a lot, think about the issues that impact various communities, pretty much not just black communities, but every culture is catching hell in one way or another. It's just different kinds of hell. And when you think about the emotional and psychological impact of some of the things that people are going through, what are you doing to invest in your emotional health? Are you living a balanced life? Because I found that a lot of people in justice movements are so invested in an issue that they are not engaging people. The issue seems to take precedence over other people and even over themselves. They don't take vacations. They don't eat well. They don't spend time with their families. They'll go through something that's emotionally traumatizing and will not get help and just suppress it as if it's not going to show up in the work. And the work of dealing with different justice issues is so important that we need you to show up emotionally healthy. Or do you just think that's for people who are weak? And that's your ego talking, because the ego then it makes you think that you don't need to be emotionally healthy, that that's just other people's problem. Are y'all following me? But you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your mind. You got to read. You got to feed your mind just like you feed your body. Next slide. The economics of justice. I've been talking about that. You have to look at one of the things that I sometimes really wrestle with is people who tell me to struggle, yet they are not struggling. People who tell me about the sacrifices that I should make for the cause, yet when I'm sitting down with them in their homes, it looks to me like they're doing really good. So now I have to deal with this whole idea of why is it that there are some people who think that it's okay for me to struggle in the movement and for them to be okay. And now we're dealing with the economic disparities within even the movement. We've created hierarchies on our own side. And then there are people who will try to determine for you just by looking at you which position you get to have, how well your life gets to be. So, and not only that, but will even make you question if you should challenge the futures of your own children by putting them in jeopardy, because you're fighting for the cause, right? So now a child's education gets sacrificed for the movement. And that's when you see it with people who we're in college, right? How many of us got student loans? I've been out of college probably twice as long as y'all been alive, and I still have student loans. Still paying for this education. Because of economic disparities, even within the movement, not only just within a culture, but because people who have told me that nothing's wrong with making less, you're doing it for a good cause. And then I started realizing, wait a minute, why is it that every person that keeps telling me this ain't broke, and I am? Why can't I go out and generate revenue to do the work that I want to do in the world? Guess what? I can, and I'm going to create a new narrative for myself. Started going to different conferences and look, Social Capital Markets Conference in San Francisco. Started reading different books on investing and talking to different people about how to move money and grow that money in ways that it would allow me to be liberated to do good work with my own resources, because I got tired of asking everyone else. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't partner with other organizations to have the resources to do the work, but you have to question, how are you going about living your own life in terms of your financial stability as you go out to do good in the world? How are you going to make sure you're okay? Or do you shame people for having money? Especially in church, I had to wrestle with that narrative when it comes to justice. It was, you were blessed if you were broke, and you were demonized if you had a lot of money. But the same people who were blessed and broke were asking the people with a lot of money to give them some funding. So certain people, it was okay to have money, and other people, it was not. And I was like, why did I accept this? Why did it even make me angry if other people had money? Why did it make me angry when people even talked about money? Because I knew there was something going on with me that wasn't comfortable with it. Because I knew I didn't have any. And I resented that and resented the people who did, who had the economic freedom to go out and do good in the world that I didn't, but it wasn't their fault. It was my own narrative around justice, entrepreneurship, and money that I had to shift. Is your hand up? Yes.
Okay, so over the past 20, 25 years, though, we've had this thing about the gospel of prosperity, which kind of went opposite of what you just said. That if you have money, that you are favored, that God favors you, and that you should have money, and if you are broke, then something is wrong with what you're doing.
Yeah, see, the gospel of prosperity was garbage. It was a setup, and the recession killed that foolishness, right? So the thing, what I am talking about is not this hustle, this pimp mentality, you know, in pulpits that's like, oh, you blessed if you got paper and something ain't right about your prayer life if you don't. No, that's foolishness. That ain't even biblical. What I'm talking about is when you do have resources, you use them well, and when you don't, it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It means that let's figure out how to do it better. It's equipping people to generate resources that they need to have to do the work, right? But it's not about, when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about prosperity gospel. I'm talking about it's okay to have enough resources to live a good quality of life while you're doing good in the world. I'm not talking about go get you a big house, big car, some jewelry, and some nice clothes. No. I'm talking about when you generate the resources that you make sure your family's okay while you're out making sure other people are okay. You see the difference? Big difference. Because one says me, me, me. The other says equip me so that I can equip others. You follow me? Any other questions or comments? Greed will never be a liberator. It doesn't liberate anyone. It doesn't even liberate the greedy person. It actually puts them in deeper bondage because now they can't even see beyond the stuff to realize that the real issue is internal. And you're never going to solve the problem. You're never going to fix what's going on inside of you with stuff that's outside of you. It doesn't work that way. Next slide. So collaboration. Now, I used to think early in my career, I had the mentality of I'll just do it myself. The moment you say I'll just do it myself, you have stopped leading. Because leaders work inside of a community. You know, there's an old saying, if you call yourself a leader and no one's following, you're just taking a walk. If you decide that they don't get it, I'll just do it by myself, you're not leading anymore. Because no one's with you. Leaders aren't doing things solo. Leaders work in collaboration. Who are your allies and who are your partners? And there's a big difference between the two. Because partners are in the fight with you. Allies will send their logo to go on the flyer. There's a difference. They'll ride with you. They may not even do a sign-on letter depending on what that sign-on letter says. They're an ally. They'll put the battery in your back, but they're not going to rock with you in the fight. Partners will. You just have to know the difference between the two. So a couple of conferences I have up here. SoCap 17, it's the Social Capital Markets Conference. It's happening in San Francisco in October. There's Neighborhood Economics. You could look them up. They're based out of Seattle, but they're doing work all over the country, investing in communities and small businesses. They're doing seed funds, startup money, impact investing. Do Good X just happened with FTE leaders, the Forum for Theological Exploration. That just happened the other day. Clear Economics is actually one of these seminars that I do through my nonprofit. And at the end of this, you'll see the website and everything. But it's clearstoryworks.org. And it's CLERE. The website is clearstoryworks.org. But you'll see it at the end. You got to build collaboration. But again, before you can get to collaboration, before you can get to dealing with money and meaning, you have to start with this whole idea of who am I meant to be in the world? Are you cultivating while you're in college? the understanding of your own identity and not a follower or fit-in mentality? Are you being along the way courageous enough to say no to things that don't align with who you are meant to be in the world? Because once you understand, like, man, this is just who I am. This has always been my identity. I just haven't been paying attention. These have always been the issues I cared about, because now I see that within my own family context or in my own upbringing, this is just a part of what I'm here to do. This is what I'm passionate about. But yet I find myself distracted by other people pulling me into things that are inconsistent with my identity. And one of the things my therapist taught me, he said, the worst kind of sabotage, of betrayal, is self-betrayal. When you betray yourself, your core values, your own identity, to say yes to something somebody else wants you to do that isn't even in alignment with who you believe you are in the world. But you say yes to fit in, and yes to make them comfortable, and yes so you're not left out, and yes so you're not talked about. And so you betray yourself to make someone else comfortable. But when you're rooted in your own sense of identity, and you talk about justice and you talk about entrepreneurship, everything that's good, you understand, isn't necessarily good for you. And then you learn to say no. And guess what? No is a complete sentence. You do not have to explain yourself. You are finally grown. Use it to your advantage. And when you align who you're meant to be in the world with how you use money to bring about good in the world and how you interpret your understanding of justice, you become more confident in your ability to say no, because you rather honor your own identity and your own values and your own passion rather than compromise it on the altar of public opinion and what other people think. Next slide. Quality content. Quality content is critical to any movement, or, well, let me say it, to entrepreneurship. In other words, quality content adds value to the lives of other people. It teaches them to do something or gives them new tools and skills, a how-to. How to solve this problem in 3 easy steps. How to change your life with 5 simple practices. How to do this, how to do that. But if people are looking for tools, how to change things in their lives, does it matter? It's the so what factor. Why should I care? Why should I want to purchase that download? So in my next book some of you are aware of my book, God's Graffiti, I did 4 years ago, that talked about the drama and trauma in my childhood. I now have a book coming out next April 3rd. It's called Love is an Inside Job, Getting Vulnerable with God. And in that book, I'm dealing with a lot of realizing how childhood trauma showed up in my adult life and decisions, and how those inherited and experiential beliefs were behind my mistakes and my fears and my anxieties and doubts as an adult. In that book, I give people content on the how to deal with your trauma, how to turn your wounds into scars, how to engage in the process of gradually moving yourself to actually seeing a therapist and saying, man, there's some stuff going on with me that is still haunting me, that happened 25 years ago, that's still shaping how I live right now. Tools, content, things that help people overcome something. Is there something in your life that you were able to get past, that while you were going through it, you thought you'd never get to the other side of it? Well, guess what? You did, and now that becomes a roadmap for other people that you can now offer to the world. That's good content. That's adding value. I learned how to stop being broke when I was making several $100,000 a year and still living paycheck to paycheck, because of my inherited narrative of I was still living a poverty story, buying stupid things, not putting money away. I was working on Capitol Hill with 2 degrees, and I bought a BMW X5. You know what I did? I put some 22s on it. I was living into this raggedy old inherited narrative that had nothing to do with financial stability. And I brought it into my current context that had nothing to do with 22-inch chrome rims. Only person on Capitol Hill with banging beats in the back of my truck and 22s. My mind was still in the projects with all that education. And I had to heal my story before I could ever hold on to some money. Are y'all following me? You do not want to leave college still holding on to hood tendencies. You will still be broke with a good job because you're going to still do what you were doing back. You're going to get paid. You're going to do what we do on payday when we're in the projects. We're going to eat and drink and buy some stuff and then pay the bills with what's left. That's poverty thinking. And sometimes we don't even realize it, but if we're going to shift the narratives of people in our communities, we got to first shift our own. So when you start doing that and you realize that I've actually accomplished it, you start offering tools. Now I do a workshop called Clear Economics. And we teach people not only, I'm not an impact investor on a large scale, but I know people who are, so I put them in the room to talk about it too. People I've learned from, I give them the stage, and we get people in the room for seminars, and they develop strategies on how to engage around money and meaning in better ways, help them understand what impact investing is and what microloans are, and how to use self-help credit union and other things that are giving better interest rates than banks are. But the information that I've received, I now turn into a tool and I give it back so that more people have the information. Now, there are sometimes, what do you do when you're the person who doesn't want to tell other people because you only want it to be you? Because now that really says my ego still is bruised and there's something unhealthy about me that I would rather keep other people broken so that I could feel good about myself. There's something going on in your story that needs to be dealt with, that needs to be redeemed. In essence, what I'm trying to say, next slide, is that in this work of justice and entrepreneurship, the process of redemption and seeking justice and equality in a society first begins with you being equitable and fair and just to yourself. And one part of doing that is being fully, unapologetically honest with you before you can ever be honest with anyone else. That you've been doing the work that you're asking other people to join you in doing. Stay in your lane. What time is it? Okay. Give me 5 more minutes. Stay in your lane. I said that when you know what you're here to do and who you're meant to be, do that. Do that only. There are multiple ways that you can do it, but stay in your lane. Find your sweet spot and stay in your lane. Steph Curry he doesn't dunk. He shoot threes. He done found his lane. LeBron dunk. When you know what you're good at, do that which you're good at and do it in a multitude of ways. And just be creative about your approaches. I write books. I do seminars. I do workshops. I do coaching. But it's all around story and redemption and healing. I have multiple delivery methods. Look, when I was a teenager, I was a drug dealer. And I realized that when I became a normal human, civilized person, I kind of left a lot of my edge and financial acumen on the block because I thought the world, it meant I had to throw everything away in order to become a Christian or a good person or a normal human in society and function well. And I realized that it made me soft and that I didn't have to lose my backbone in order to become a normal person that wasn't, acting like I was still in the hood. And I found that some of the ways I thought, like with books and content, was the same. I'm like, everything that I'm looking at on Capitol Hill and politics, all of it is like a street hustle. They just wear suits and they do things a little different. They use different words, but this process is about a hustle hard grind. It's get up early, work hard. Well, in the projects, we get up late. We work hard at night, but it's a mindset of don't quit, be resilient, stay tough, be firm, own your truth. Don't be, soft and backing down at the moment somebody tries to buck up against you. You have to still own who you are and stand flat-footed and unapologetic in it. And whatever you've experienced in life, some of those things, the learning experiences you don't throw away. The behaviors, yes, but the learnings, the resilience and the tenacity you don't throw away. But you have to be courageous in this work and bold and confident with people. Can't be no pushover. Not when you're doing justice work. Because when you start pushing on the system's going to push back. And you got to be built for that. And sometimes they're going to push and you're going to fall and you learn how fast you heal. But you're going to get bruised in this thing. And you're going to learn how fast you heal, how, what kind of punch you can take when it comes to equality. How to do things different ways, how to dodge a punch when you know they're about to throw one. And understand politics with some savvy and economics with some savvy. But in all of it, you got to stay in your lane, find your sweet spot. What kind of justice? What kind of change? What's the metrics? How are you going to quantify your outcomes? Next slide. Purpose in 6 words. We're just about done. So here's the exercise that I want to leave you with that I really hope you think about not only over this day, but over the next few days. Rudy Rasmus, my very good friend, he's like family to me. We did an exercise with him 2 years ago at his church. And it went something like this. He said, at the end of your life, when it's all said and done, and you've done everything you've set out to do, everyone's going to have something to say about you. And typically what they say about you can be summed up in a 6-word sentence. She was that, or he was this. In 6-word sentence. And he said, but here's the thing. You get to determine what that 6-word sentence will be. And so he gave us a break, and he said, I want you to think about a 6-word sentence that describes who you are in the world, what you want people to say about you when you're done. And we took a little time, and I came back, and everyone was giving their sentences, and mine was, he helps hurting people find healing. That's the sentence. That's what I want people to say about me when I'm done. That's the evidence I want to leave behind. With my work, with my money, with my engagement, with the change that I've hopefully helped other people make, he helped hurting people find healing. And everyone gave their 6 words. And he said, now, the thing is, not only do you get to determine what the 6 words are that people will say, but once you find your 6-word sentence, every day that you get up, everything that you do is to make those 6 words true in terms of what people will say, the conversations you engage in, the things you do, the things you don't do, the places you go, the types of things you read, what you offer the world, has to be in alignment with who you really, at the end of the day, what you want people to say about who you were. And that's different from letting other people tell you who you are, as opposed to knowing and then setting out and doing it. Because now anything that they say that's consistent with who you are is confirmation. It's affirming. I already know that's who I set out to be, rather than letting the world define you. They're affirming you. Next slide. We dealt with metrics. Next slide. Recommended readings. Okay, there's only one slide after this. These are some really good books. If you are in a church and dealing with justice issues, I highly recommend Christina Cleveland's book, Disunity in the Church. It deals with racial dynamics over the years. It's really, really good. The Soul of Money, probably one of my top 5 favorite books in life. By Lynn Twist. She has several versions of it, but this one, make sure you get the subtitle, Transforming Your Relationship with Money and Life, The Soul of Money. That book is absolutely amazing. My book's got to plug it. It's coming out in April. It is on pre-sale on Amazon. You can order now. Love is an Inside Job. Getting Vulnerable with God. If you just went to Amazon and typed in my name, or if you went to my website, you see it there. Clear Story. The Obstacle is the Way and Ego is the Enemy are both by Ryan Holiday. They're really good books dealing with your authentic self and purpose and keeping your ego in check. And then lastly, The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. She does a lot of work on vulnerability and dealing with your story. The stuff I'm kind of into now, so I guess you could call me Brother Brown, just a different version of what Brene's doing. But she's really good. I highly recommend that book. She has several books out that are pretty good. But I started with The Gifts of Imperfection. These are all books that I've read that I think are really good things to read in your free time. I know you're in school, you're already reading, but you should have some escape reading that frees you up from the schoolwork. Every true leader keeps a tool in their backpack, and that's a book. I'm 47 years old. I keep my backpack with me, and I keep at least 2 books in it because I'm always reading something, because that knowledge is power. Next slide. So that's my nonprofit, Clear Story Works. The website is clearstoryworks.org. You can go there under Clear Vision and Clear Economics. You will see the seminars that are actually hosted here in downtown Atlanta. One's coming up in January, the last Saturday in January of 2018, and then the next one after that will be Clear Economics, which will be, I think, the last weekend in April. But if you go to Clear Story Works and go through those pages, Clear Vision, we help people write life strategic plans with a 90-day action plan, and I bring in a couple of coaches to do that. Clear Economics, we deal with money and meaning, and I bring in some heavy hitters that deal with money. And then we do some international trips around story. The program that I fundraise for now is called Clear Conscience. It's my emotional health and wellness program. Quick story. Had the vision for that program back in April. A friend of mine read a draft of Love is an Inside Job, Getting Vulnerable with God, and said you need a program around this because he was adopted and went through a lot of abuse when he was a kid. He's a fundraiser now. He said, if you develop this program, I'll help you raise the money. We agreed on raising $155,000. I'm not a fundraiser, and there were days because of my narrative, I wasn't sure if we could do it, and days when I believed we could. We launched that program, that campaign, that fundraising campaign 7 weeks ago. Within 7 weeks, we've already raised $90,000. Just by jumping out there and fighting back against my own story sometimes when I'm like, oh, okay, this is a lot of money. It ain't a lot of money. It really isn't in the whole scheme of money. It's not a lot. It's $155,000. That's like giving a whale a Tic Tac in America. That's nothing in this country. And we're using it to do some real good in the world, dealing with trauma and helping people heal their stories. We'll hit our goal before February. But Clear Conscience, you'll see the page on that on the website. That is my time. We started a little late, but I think we are still out of time nonetheless. Thank you guys for your patience. I really appreciate you. And as I always do, any of y'all who know me in this room know that we are going to take a picture. So everybody in the back gonna have to scoot up so that I can take this selfie, because that's what I do. And it'll only take a minute. So appreciate you guys for your time. I do have some books up here, my devotional. I only do donations. If you want to get a devotional, I'll sign it. Whatever you want to donate is cool with me. They retail for $15, but I only do donations, and that goes to the nonprofit. So thank you, guys.